All right, guys. So in a continuation of the reaction to the Virginia gubernatorial election that saw the Democrats get swept by the Republicans as there was a red wave that rolled through Virginia, right? Again, and this not only affected the top of the ticket, the governor, Glenn Youngkin, who won, it also was happening at the local levels too, right? Virginia essentially just flipped to a red state, right? Overnight, it seemed. Okay, now the liberal media and the Democrats are freaking out about this, right? We've been going over a whole lot of mental gymnastics that they have been doing in order to explain what happened. Now, in this video right here, I want to talk about the Views conversation in reaction to this, because they're actually going to have a pretty interesting conversation about this, right? In which Sonny Hostin is essentially going to make the argument that white women voted for Republicans because they don't want their children to be taught about slavery. Take a look.
I actually think it did stick. And I actually think that Trump was very present. I think he made a lot of phone calls for Youngkin. And I think that Youngkin was careful not to mention Trump by name, but he was Trump all in. And if you look at the exit polls, 57% actually of white women voted for Youngkin, much like 55% of white women voted for Trump over Hillary Clinton. And what they said during the exit polls was that CRT was their most pressing issue.
33% said the economy.
Yeah, but 57% is a lot more than 33%.
And of those women, but not of total voters.
And I think what's interesting is that Democrats are not good with the messaging that CRT is fake.
Well, it doesn't exist in the school system. Of course, it's in law school.
Of course it doesn't.
Listen, if people want to know what is being taught in your school, go over to the school, get an idea of the curriculum, because they will give it to you. They will show you anything you want to know.
But people were watching their kids online throughout the pandemic, and they heard a lot of this, and they recorded a lot of this. It may not be exactly what CRT is, but there is a lot of racialized teaching.
Well,
I'm not talking about teaching slavery here. That's
you
fine.
do remember you remember what happened during the pandemic. I think George Floyd happened during the pandemic.
In my hometown.
That's why people were talking about
there was a racial
race. There was a whole bunch of stuff going on.
I hate to break it to you with two young kids in school, but it's been going on long before George.
Well, I will tell you this, and I hate to break it to you, that most schools that I'm aware of have tried to teach the history of how this country has gone on.
Absolutely, and it should. Good, bad, and ugly, it should.
And you cannot put it in a different name. You can't pretend we didn't go through this. So during the pandemic...
No one is pretending that, though. No one's pretending. But no one is pretending. My second grade report was on slavery and the abolition of slavery. I mean, it's being taught to my kids. No one is pretending it didn't happen. In fact, I think when we whitewash history by getting rid of certain names and statues and people and Laura Ingalls Wilder references, then we forget. We need to learn.
The 57% of white women that voted for Youngkin do want to pretend that it didn't happen, and they don't want their white children.
I wouldn't suspect that of those women. That's not true.
Hold on.
That's not true.
We'll be right back.
All right, guys. So you seen that, you heard that, right? I thought that back and forth between Michelle Tafoya and Sonny Hostin and Whoopi Goldberg was interesting, because it kind of highlights why the Democrats are truly out of touch with America, because they love to play this semantics game where they act like, well, critical race theory is not being taught in schools, right? Which is what Joy Behar is saying, and the rest of the liberal media have been saying literally for the last 2 days. Critical race theory is not being taught in schools, so it's made up. Parents are upset about nothing, right? They're upset about nothing. Again, and the Democrats at the national level have seen to adopt this strategy from the liberal media to essentially tell people that their fears are not real, right? When the reality is that there is some racialized education that is going on in schools. That is a fact. Now, whether or not you want to call it critical race theory, that's up to you. It doesn't matter. That's not what they're really upset about. Critical race theory is a term that's been thrown on it, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you call it, right? Just because the graduate school critical race theory course is not being taught in school does not mean that some of the aspects of critical race theory in regards to what it calls for is not seeping down into these schools, because it actually is, right? It actually is. In fact, over the last few days, I've actually seen videos of teachers coming out and explaining how critical race theory is actually implemented in schools. And I want you guys to listen to this admin from a school district in Indiana explain this. Take a look.
I'm the science coach and admin in the largest public school district in Indiana. I'm in dozens of classrooms a week, so I see exactly what we're teaching our students. When we tell you that schools aren't teaching critical race theory, that it's nowhere in our standards, that's misdirection. We don't have the quotes and theories as state standards per se. We do have critical race theory in how we teach. We tell our teachers to treat students differently based on color. We tell our students that every problem is a result of white men, and that everything Western civilization built is racist. Capitalism as a tool of white supremacy. Those are straight out of Kimberly Crenshaw's main points, verbatim in Critical Race Theory, the writings that formed the movement. This is in math, history, science, English, the arts, and it's not slowing down. If students of color have lower reading scores, it's because of inequity. Therefore, we take from the white students and give to the color students. That's Richard Delgado, straight out of CRT and Introduction. All teaching is political, with reality and facts taking the back seat. That's Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings, who outlined how she saw critical race theory fleshed out in public schools in 1995. When schools tell you that we aren't teaching critical race theory, it means one thing. Go away and look into our affairs no further. It isn't about transparency, it isn't about cultural relevance. It's race essentialism, painted to look like the district cares about students of color. We call it anti-racism, so you feel bad if you disagree with our segregationist pedagogy. It's taking advantage of kids' vulnerability and parents' inactivity to preen over social snake oil schemes designed to create division. Parents, when we tell you critical race theory isn't taught in our schools, we're lying. Keep looking.
Ding, 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 ding. Couldn't explain it better myself, right? I mean, that's literally what's happening, right? Now, whether you want to call that critical race theory or not, that's on you. But as long as the Democrats and the liberal media keep acting like critical race theory is not being taught at school, or that there's no racialized education going on in school, hey, be my guest. Be my guest. But don't come out here and try to blame white women for voting in a way that they feel like it's going to protect their kids, because this type of racialized education that this teacher just outlined, right, that says, hey, you know what, if black students aren't doing as well as they should, then we have to take from white students in order to fix that, right? This idea of equity. If they want to vote against that, I don't blame them for that, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody's going to look out for themselves. So when you constantly are pushing this racialized education that does not benefit a certain group of people, why would you be upset if they decide that, you know what, hey, I'm going to vote against this? Right? That I'm going to look out for my kids and my family to make sure they get the best education, and that they're not being held back because of somebody else. Because that's really what it's about. That's actually what it's about. And again, the liberal media does this trick where they try to say, well, it's because they don't want their kids to be taught about slavery. And it's like, no, slavery has always been taught about. We've always talked about Jim Crow. We've always taught about the civil rights movement. Everybody knows the history of this country generally, and that black people have not always been treated well in this country. Everybody knows that. Okay? So they're not voting against teaching their kids slavery in school. That's not what they're voting against. When the liberal media says that, that's a deflection to try to make it seem like parents' concerns are ridiculous. What they're actually really voting against when it comes to CRT, again, is this concept of equity. Right? That's what they're really voting against. When you're dumbing down our education system simply in the name of social justice, when you're politicizing our students and their learning environment simply in the name of woke social justice, when you're telling kids that they are superior or inferior simply based off their race, yeah, that people are going to have problems with that. And that's not just a white thing. That's also a black thing, right? As we've seen plenty of black parents come out and say, no, I don't want my kids to be taught that they're inferior to another race just because of their skin color, right? I don't want my kids to be taught that. I want my kids to believe that they can be whatever they want to be if they work hard enough, right? Which is the right message, okay? So again, trying to dumb this down as if critical race theory is just strictly an issue with white people. Again, it just showed they don't understand what's actually going on. Parents from all across the spectrum are upset about that. They're not cool with that. for various reasons. That's what they're voting against. Nobody wants to see their child have less of an opportunity in the name of social justice, right? Nobody wants that. People like Sonny Hostin, again, they don't want to acknowledge that. They don't want to acknowledge that for what it is, that the system that they're calling for, that they're trying to support, is fundamentally not fair, right? It is fundamentally calling for a certain group of people in this country to be put at a disadvantage for others. It goes against the idea of a colorblind society and equal opportunity, right? In favor of, well, we want equal outcome. That's what they want, which is equity, right? That's what they want. But see, Sonny Hostin, she doesn't want to have that conversation because she knows that even moderates, right? Even people who, kind of lean left on some things, right? That are sympathetic to some parts of the so-called social justice movement. She knows that if you frame the conversation that way, if you actually acknowledge what the real issue is, a lot of those people, when pressed about it, as you saw in Virginia, they're going to say, hey, you know what? I'm not on board with all this anti-white stuff, right? I'm not on board with giving my kids less of an opportunity and taking away from them for somebody else, right? That's the truth. And this is not just a white thing. This also shows up in the Asian community as well, right? When it comes to college admissions, they go out, they outperform, but yet they're being discriminated against when it comes to college admissions because, well, they're too smart, right? They perform too well. And there's been massive backlash against this because, again, it's fundamentally not fair. It goes against the idea of a meritocracy, that you get what you earn. It goes against that. And this is something that, again, I've made this argument before. If/when in certain positions, certain aspects of our society where black people outperform, for example, athletics, they would never want equity to be implemented in that, right? Could you imagine an NFL where now you have to have a certain amount of white people, right? Where it has to be 70% white purely in the name of equity. Could you imagine that? No, black people would backlash against that. They'll say, no, it's not fair. We have the best athletes, and therefore the best athletes should play. But for whatever reason, they don't think that should apply to any other part of life. And then they want to get mad at white women and people who vote in favor of their best interest. When the reality is that everybody's out here voting in favor of their best interest in their kids and their families. That's who they're going to look out for first. So again, when you're talking about having an education system that disadvantages a certain group of people, of course they're going to vote against it, right? Again, the same way a lot of Asians are against affirmative action because they know it disadvantages them. And there's nothing wrong with voting in your best interest. It's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So when Sonny Hostin comes out here and deflects and says, oh, well, white women just don't want their kids to be taught about slavery, you know what? Hey, if that's what you think, if that's how you want to sum it up, fine, right? Do that. But it's not really helping you. It's not really helping you get to the root core issue as to what is motivating these parents to vote the way they vote. And again, if Democrats and the liberal media want to do this, if they want to play this game, hey, let them. Obviously, the race card is not working anymore. All this fear-mongering about race and this and that and Trump and all, it's not working. It's not working anymore. So again, keep doing that. I hope you keep doing it, right? Keep saying that. Keep ignoring the real issue in favor of race baiting and making up fake reasons for why a certain group of people votes the way they vote. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. But don't be surprised if/when the Democrats lose in 2022 and lose in 2024. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a black conservative perspective. Peace.